What we're going to talk about today is the benefits of our friendship. The big benefit for me is that I feel like I could tell you anything.
I don't know, talking to you or asking you a question about something or coming to you with something that I'm not sure about. It's like asking Google. Like you've just got all the right suggestions.
That's characteristics of codependency. When you want to fix the world and give advice to people, and you want them to take your advice, so you're the reason that they get better.
Huh. I mean, it seems like it's part of a karmic path that you have to learn how to be that.
Please don't feed the demons. They get big and you only see them. Please don't feed the demons. Accepting them is the only way to defeat them.
What is the crack? Welcome back to Empty Space, the void you can fill with whatever you want. Or should we change the word from void to just an empty space? Or not even an empty space, just a space within you that you can fill with whatever you want. Because why not? For too long in my lifetime, I called it a void, and I filled it with addictions, which was not good for me. But today, anyway, well, it was good in the long run after I learned my lessons. But during it, it was difficult. In hindsight, though, hindsight is 2020, isn't it? But today I'm joined by Krisz Goober, my good buddy.
What's happening, bro?
What is the story, boy? Well, what we're going to talk about today is the benefits of our friendship, the benefits of what I would consider it to be a conscious, non-judgmental friendship.
100%.
Or do you think to word it better would be a positively judgmental friendship? Because surely you can't live your life without making any judgments.
I think there's a difference between constructive criticism and judgment, though. I think that's an important distinction between the two. Because no matter what concept we talk about, it's never of judgment. It's more offering a different perspective as such. It doesn't, I don't think it ever starts with, I think that's bad because, you know.
Yeah, but isn't judgment also positive? I'm just looking it up there to get the dictionary definition. The old semantics are important, you know?
Yeah. I feel like analysis would work as well.
But that's true too. The ability, okay, so judgment, the dictionary definition is the ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that sounds right. I think there's always a negative connotation to the word judgment. I think it has a bad taste, especially, you know, if you practice any kind of spiritual practice. We talk of non-judgment all the time. So I think it has this, the same as ego. It has a negative connotation that doesn't necessarily need to be there. You know.
Well, do you think it would be safe to say that both exist? The negative and the positive, because they always exist in everything.
Oh yeah, 100%. But what I'm saying is that it seems to have more of a negative, especially in conscious and spiritual communities. You know, when you talk of judgment, it tends to have a bad taste most of the time when it doesn't actually have to.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I agree as well. I was just asking, do you believe that the two exist?
As in the positive and the negative within judgment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because you can judge from a point of ego or a point of what would be the opposite of that?
I feel like what's going to happen today is I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions. But if you're judging it in a positive sense, can that not come from the ego as well?
I mean, I feel like to some extent, everything does come from ego, you know, because no matter how much you try to detach yourself from a situation to see it from you know, a more objective perspective, you're still always going to have your own. You're always going to have your own perspective. I mean, that is ego in its essence, right? So you can't really judge something without ego.
What's your definition of ego?
I suppose the physical body that you inhabit, you know, within that there is an ego. Because right now I'm embodying this person, so this person identifies as Krisz Gruber, you know, so that's my ego, you know, and anything past that then is trying to look at it from a more detached perspective. rather than a material perspective.
What are you detached from? So in that perspective,
Yeah, like the material. I think the material and societal side of things. I feel.
so do you mean you can be detached from your conditioning?
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of how I feel. Yeah.
Or would you believe then that like to be able to do that, you'd have to know your conditioning first?
I mean, I think if you know you have conditioning, like you can detach yourself from your ego without being 100% aware of things like your conditioning and things like your traumas. I feel like you can still have that detachment, because that detachment, I mean, in itself, it doesn't. My God, I was not prepared for this at all. No, I think in its essence, I think you can detach yourself from stuff even if you don't know what the stuff is, because that's the whole point, that you're being detached from it. You know, you're trying to look at it from an outside point of view, from an objective perspective, rather than a personal one. You know.
Yeah, but can you achieve that if you're not aware of your own conditioning? Because are you not stuck in some form of limited thinking that you can't see?
I mean, I suppose that then, yeah, I suppose that then would be the empath conversation, wouldn't it? Because I mean, people that have a more empathic or empathetic kind of default setting inside them, I feel you are able to look at it from an objective point of view without actually being fully there yourself. If that makes any sense, like that's yeah. Actually, I think that's like one of the first things that you go through as an empath as well, is of looking at things from other perspectives rather than your own.
Yeah, but they could be broken perspectives as well, because you're not healed.
So okay, so then do you think there is a point that you can reach in life where you can look at something fully objective, like fully objectively, like fully detached from your own point of view? Do you believe that that's a reachable state?
Yes, I do believe it's so, because all the other states exist. So therefore it has to exist from that opinion,
Mm-hmm.
or from that perspective.
Hmm.
I actually personally believe that the more that you know yourself and the more aware you become of why you are the way you are, the easier it is to understand other people.
Hmm.
Therefore,
Yeah,
it's easier to respond to the present moment in the present, rather than responding from a trauma that you don't know you're responding from.
I feel that. Yeah. I mean, I suppose if you're on a conscious journey, if you're on a journey of self-discovery, I suppose it's constant growth, really, isn't it? Like you're always gonna. There's never going to be a point where you're done. I feel, So I mean, even a couple of years ago, I feel when I first had my first spiritual awakening, and if I look back to the guy I was then, compared to the guy who I thought I was then, when you first feel like, oh, I have access to so much knowledge right now, this is whatever, and then a couple of years later you look back and you're like, I didn't know anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that ever stops being the case.
Man, honestly, I hear that, because even 3 years ago I didn't understand what I understand now. So I'm like, what am I going to know in another 10 years? Like,
Oh yeah,
it's unreal.
100%.
Like, so
And it's
another,
crazy. Sorry, just it's crazy how that can change in a day. You could be in one mindset for months on end, and the events of one day or 2 days can completely change you as a person. Like you could look back to last week and be like, wow, who was I then? Do you know what I mean?
hey, I feel that. When I had my first colitis flare up, I spent maybe 4 or 5 months in the headspace of why me.
Mm.
And the first flare up I had, like, I didn't know what it was. So I was pretty bedbound and I had no medication because I wasn't diagnosed yet.
Yeah.
And I was a shadow of who I am now. I was just lying in bed and I was stuck, and it was constant pain. But my mindset was victimhood.
Mm.
And why me? Why me? Why me? One day I read an article about two athletes who suffered from it.
Mm.
And I realized how serious it was. And I broke down in tears because I realized it's a condition that's in me forever. Like, and I have to take responsibility for it. And with that shift of mentality, it turned from why me into, of course, me. But not in a beating me up sense. It was well, it makes sense. I did neglect my health when I was addicted to gambling. I wouldn't eat sometimes because I would want to gamble. Like, I wouldn't even go to the toilet because I wouldn't want to miss a race. Like, that's how bad it was. So I started thinking, how many unconscious acts did I do to contribute to this circumstance or to bring it about? And if we go back deep then about soul contracts, it was in my soul contract for this to arrive if I didn't become conscious enough to take care of myself. And of course it's here. Of course it is. I need to actually start taking care of myself. I need to, and the conversation that went on in my head that day then after the release was one of, look after yourself, man. Clean up that habit. Eat your food. Listen to your body. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's really true what they say about if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll have to make time for your illness.
Yeah, 100, man.
Yeah, that's absolute fact.
So it made it, and do you know the way they say, oh yeah, it took you about 4 or 5 months to reach that conclusion. It actually only took a moment.
Yeah.
And after that,
no, carry on.
No, go on. What are you going to say?
I was just going to ask, but then, would you say it only took that one moment, or for those couple of months, were you changing your vibration to that of one that's ready to receive that piece of information that then changed your outlook? You know?
Well, yeah, I was listening to Alan Watts constantly. All day, every day. I was obsessed because I couldn't do anything else really. I was just lying in bed. I was like, well, I may as well put on my spiritual philosophical hat and pull it out.
Yeah.
And it served me very well because I was building up towards it, I guess. But then when I experienced last year the other flare, my second flare up of my lifetime, spirituality really served me then. Because what dawned on me was, if you can be very spiritual and deep and understanding when things are going well, that's easy. How about now when things aren't going well?
Yeah.
This is when you need
that's
it.
actually something I admired in you a lot as well at that time. I remember talking to you, and you always had a very analytical and positive outlook on everything. Even when it was really bad, you always had something positive to contribute, or you had a laugh at something, or you're always in very good spirits internally, even if you were suffering. Like, you always had a very, very good mindset towards the whole thing, I did admire that a lot.
Nice one, boy. Well, all right, let's talk about the benefits of the friendship that we have. So I'll go first and you can jump in whenever.
Okay.
The big benefit for me is that I feel like I could tell you anything.
Yeah.
And that's very comforting. And the second thing is that you actually hear me when I speak as well, which is nice.
I would second that, and to that I would add that there's always, I don't know, talking to you or asking you a question about something, or coming to you with something that I'm not sure about. It's like asking Google. Like, you've just got all the right suggestions. You know what I mean? It's like, I would say something and you'd be like, well, did you mean? And it will be the right thing, like, yeah, you're very good at pointing in the right direction.
Cool, man.
And also asking the right questions to help analyze the situation.
I enjoy that a lot, but as well, I recognize a lot of me in you as well. I see a lot of my old self in you and my new self. I can relate to a lot of the headspaces you be in. So I'm like, yeah, I think I recognize where he's at, so I can actually point him in the direction to get out of it.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Because anytime you've ever given advice on anything or ever had like offered your perspective on anything, it never came from a place where it usually comes in most people of like, well, I reckon I know how to fix that issue. You'd be like, no, 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 no. I've seen that issue. I've had that issue. This worked for me. It mightn't work for you, but you know, to get the conversation going in an understanding, validating and positive direction rather than just the usual doctoring of others' problems that a lot of people tend to come at you with when you talk about an issue.
Well, I was that guy. I was that guy before. That was what would you say? That's characteristics of codependency. When you want to fix the world and give advice to people, and you want them to take your advice, so you're the reason that they get better.
Huh.
And you're totally attached to the outcome. So you're not actually all about serving the other person. You're really just about serving your own image.
Oh, I think I heard about it. That it's like hero complex or something, isn't it?
Not sure if it's the hero complex. Sounds correct though.
Yeah. I'm almost 100% sure that's not the correct terminology, but it's hero something anyway.
But it's more essentially about I'm right and I'm a legend because I'm right, and you're going to praise me because I gave you the right advice. Whereas if people don't then listen to your advice, then you get really angry, you know?
Yeah.
And I was that guy for a while, and I had to, obviously I didn't see it. So anyone who is like that, this is where the non-judgmentalness comes in. If they can't see it, it's not their fault. Like, I was lucky enough to be in a circumstance which brought it out, and I could see it. And I thought, I need to change that perspective now. I need to get a more evolved way of looking at it. I need to essentially not attach myself to the outcome of the offerings that I give people, and change the words I use as well, and change the approach. So once you're aware of it, you can change it. Like once you become aware of how you are in something that isn't useful, you can shift it to something that is useful. Because really it's I would personally believe really it's, you always get the opposite to what you want first. Well, not always, but most of the time. Or you are the opposite to what you'd like to be, because you're learning how to be what you want. For instance, I always desired to be someone who was good at giving solid advice, but I had to be someone who wasn't good at it first to learn how to be good at it.
I feel that. I was actually having a conversation about something similar to this recently, about how if you've been taught as a child a certain life skill, it's almost subconscious to you, right? So you grow up and you just have it. Like, for example, the ability to handle confrontation. If you come from a family where there was a healthy dynamic of handling confrontation, you grow up and you just have a healthy dynamic to handling confrontation. But if you grow up in a household where there's toxicity regarding a certain skill or a certain aspect of life or dynamic, and then you have to, as an adult, heal from that and reteach yourself the healthy version of it, how it makes it seem so much more conscious when you're actually then practicing the healthy dynamic, if that makes any sense at all. You know, like if you've been the toxic, or if you've seen the toxic and then go to the healthy, it seems like it seems like it's part of a karmic path that you have to learn how to be that, you know, rather than just being almost like given it, you know, at childhood or whatever. But how much more like an experience I've had is specifically with confrontation. Like I had an issue with confrontation for a long time, because in my childhood there was an issue around that. So when I've learned to handle that as an adult, now I see every situation, like it kind of makes me be conscious in the moment of every situation where there's confrontation, rather than just, oh yeah, that's one of those situations again. Like I'm actually conscious of how much I've grown from it, or how I'm different now. And then every single one of those conscious moments brings me into the present again and again and again. And it's almost like it's almost like a healthy cycle of growth. Yeah. I think that's
so. Essentially, every time you have to deal with it, it presents itself and you deal with it, and you learn a little bit more, and then you have to deal with it again. And you're like, I'm actually learning every time I'm faced with it.
Yeah, and it brings awareness to every one of those moments, rather than just something's happening. It's like, oh, this is the thing. Okay, right. Let me see how I'm handling it this time. You know, and then if I handle a moment like that not as well as I could have, I then go back later and think, oh, okay, right. I see where I could have done better. So next time I'll keep that in mind, you know?
I hear you. I'd be like that as well. I mean, I've never had an issue with confrontation, but I used to have a short temper. Remember I was saying this to you before? When I was younger, I had an extremely short temper, and it followed me to adulthood, but would only present itself in certain relationships or certain friendships. I just get tick for no reason, you know. It would look from the outside, it'd be like, what is he getting tick about? Like, stupid. Like, and I remember I caught myself doing it to you one day. You just asked me a simple question, and I lost my patience, and I caught myself losing my patience. You just asked me a simple question, and I just responded like a narky fucking dickhead, and sounds very judgmental, doesn't it? And I caught myself, and then I went, Krisz, I'm very sorry about that. That's my conditioning response or something like that.
I remember that. Yeah, and I think that actually then brings us to another point of one of the benefits of our friendship and the dynamic of it as well, is that then also ties into the whole confrontation thing, right? Because that kind of a response has been an issue for me in a lot of friendships and relationships I've been in. Whereas with you, it was very quickly resolved. Like I didn't have any of that lingering, like, oh, fuck, what now, you know? Because it was, you know, there was a bit of a moment, and then it passed to the health. Like, I didn't even get any bit of anxiety about it in that moment, you know? It just seemed like, fair enough, you know, whatever's going on. And then it just passed, you know?
Because it's not unreal, isn't it? How it ties in your karmic path. It's about figuring out how to face confrontation, and then in my part, it's figuring out how to lose that anger and not be so fucking tick. And like, I mellowed out so much. Like, I honestly have mellowed out so much since I became aware of it. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, I'll tell you a story of how extreme it was, right? When I was about 12 or 13, I was playing indoor hurling, right? And you weren't allowed to slide on the floor. And if you slid on the floor, it was a free against you.
Okay.
I got a clatter in the leg and I fell, right? And the ref gave a free against me for sliding. I couldn't handle it. I ended up fucking baiting the hurley off him because the injustice and the rage. I ended up baiting the hurley off him. I was like, it's not fucking true. I fucking got hit, you fucking idiot. Like, and I bait him with the hurley. I ended up getting barred. I couldn't hurl for about 3 or 4 weeks. Like, I mean, I got really, that's how hot-headed I was, which I understand stems from undealt with anger.
Yeah.
And so, because that's what it is. Like, it's anger and fear that's unresolved and unprocessed. So like in meditation, or in any counseling I did, I had to look at it, see where it came from. And essentially what I realized was getting picked on a lot as a child, also being a little bit self-aware as a kid, was a tough spot to be in because you're surrounded by people who really weren't interested in being that way.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt, as a kid, like I was gaslit. I never really stood up for myself or stood up for what I understood. And that's where the anger would have came from. So
I feel that.
How I healthily handle it now is express what I understand, but I'm not attached to anyone believing what I say. Which was a process. Like, that was a process. I'm talking no lies now when I say I went through 2 or 3 years fixated on overcoming these inner things, to the point, like, you seen my old bedroom in Cork. It was covered in quotes, all the walls.
Yeah.
You look at a crazy man's house and it's like covered in quotes, or some people would say a genius's house. I prefer the latter, and I'd be listening, and something that would really resonate with me, I'd write it down because I need to remember that. So I wrote it on my wall because words on the wall are vibrating into your room. So I thought, like, this is going to seep into my consciousness. Even when I'm asleep, I'm surrounded by wisdom. Therefore, I'm going to become it. Like, I have to embody it if I eat, sleep, and breathe it. Like, and it really helped. There's a couple of like a simple sentence. If you wake up looking at the world, if you wake up thinking that the world needs to be fixed, you're essentially seeing yourself as needing to be fixed as well.
Yeah.
Because you are the world. So you wake up thinking that you're broken and that you need to be fixed. And then that vibration is what you're working off. So the healthier mind frame is everything is the way it's supposed to be due to karmic nature and laws and whatever. Everything is the way it's meant to be. It's not up to you to fix it, but it's up to you to live in your heart, essentially. And not everybody needs to do this now, is what I'm saying. I'm just saying for me, it's up to me to live in my heart and understand myself and love myself, live in that vibration. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if someone comes to me and doesn't listen to my voice. It doesn't matter because the seeds have been planted anyway, and it's up to that person then on their journey to figure it out whenever they're ready to figure it out. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I feel that.
Because I used to get tick at people who wouldn't listen to my voice. Like, I used to be like, why don't you listen to what I'm saying? It's unreal. Yeah.
To be honest, I've been there as well. I've done that as well. Especially, I feel like, especially the first time you have any kind of a spiritual awakening, and that's a term I'm going to be using quite a lot in this conversation. But what I mean by that essentially is the first time you start gaining any kind of awareness to your patterns and your toxicity or your behavioral things or whatever. But yeah, when I first had that as well, I think the first thing you want to do when you see any bit of truth outside of the box that you've been in so far is to just preach it to everybody around you. I think that's the number one thing. Like, how are you not seeing this? Don't you get it? And then you want to like almost shake people into seeing what you're seeing. Well, like that never works. That's not at all. But it's understandable too that that's the first thing you want to do, especially if you're any more of an empath at all, because then you see a lot of suffering in the world and you want to fix it. But what you said there is very valuable about how if you see suffering in the world, or if that's what you wake up every day thinking, like, being fixated on more, then that definitely speaks about your internal as well.
Just want to say as well, though, there's nothing wrong with understanding and acknowledging that sad, negative sad and hurtful things are happening. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that they're there, but to see it as broken or as wrong, I think isn't the full picture. It's harder to accept.
Well, I fully agree with that. Also, that's something that I think is really important, and a lot of I don't know if you could call them New Age or Neo or whatever, but like a lot of the spiritual communities that seem to be, I don't even want to say in the mainstream, but like a lot of the spiritual communities that you run into, they'd like to spread the whole like positive vibes only, love and light vibe or whatever. And yeah, I think it is important to look at the shadow elements as well, because yin and yang does exist for a reason. I do feel like that. I do feel like both aspects need to be in balance. There's even religions devoted to this, like the Agori Hindus and stuff, that just practice all the dark shadow stuff because they feel like that's a presence that still needs to be there, So I think it's important to notice that there's things and to know that there's negative things as well as positive. But yeah, I mean, dwelling on it is what the difference is, what you actually feed your mind and your soul and your body every day is the difference, and it's like what you said about writing on your walls and stuff like that as well. I've only had an experience with that in the negative aspect, because when I was a teenager, I had loads of like heavy metal, black metal, death metal posters everywhere on my walls. I had like anarchy graffiti. It was, if you ever think of like a punk rocker's room from like, I don't know, the 70s or whatever in England. Like that was my room when I was a kid. And my mental state was messed up from it. Like, because that's all that was being from every wall in my room, just, you know, bombarding me with all this negative imagery and all that. So I feel how the opposite end of that as well would fully work, you know. That's why I have now mandala stuff and homes and Tibetan flags and stuff, because I do try to, you know, maintain a positive vibe around me as well.
Well, I used to say for a long time that life is class, right? And it used to get refuted all the time. And I realized, oh yeah, that's only half a message, because life is shit as well.
Yeah.
So I needed to change the sentence to something that couldn't be refuted. And like, we're all class. It's just a journey to the why.
Yeah.
You can't refute that.
Yeah, I love that. I do.
You could try refute it, but in its essence, you can't refute it. You could try. You could have an argument about it, but you wouldn't win.
Yeah. No, that's true. I agree with that.
Because essentially, yeah, life can be shit as well. I mean, life is shit and life is beautiful. It's the two things, and both of them exist. And to try ignore any of them, I think you're out of balance, and you won't actually find useful wisdom then if you're just focused on one or the other. You need to see that the two exist. Like if you've ever met anyone who has like gone from addiction to religion without any internal process really, and gone straight to religion, and they're searching for and God is now the thing that they're addicted to.
Yeah.
They're missing the wisdom of internal process and the wisdom of knowledge that isn't beyond you.
Yeah. True self-reflection as well, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a conversation with a woman before on the street who was a born-again Christian, and what I noticed in the conversation was essentially she was praising God for all the good and judging herself for all the negative. So there was absolutely no self-power, self-love, self-respect. Actually, no, like you're denying yourself responsibility as well in that sense. Absolutely no praise for herself either. Like it was all, oh, I didn't do that, God did that. It's like, okay, what about the negative stuff? So he didn't just do the positive stuff, he did the negative stuff as well. But then you are God. And then she'd be like, what? You can't say that. And I was like, okay, well, we can't really have a conversation in that sense if we can't go there, like.
Yeah. But I mean, as well as that though, I think I'm a big believer that everybody is exactly where they need to be at every moment, you know. And everybody has it. Like my father, for example, is massively religious. Like he's the founder and leader of a gospel choir. You know, he's been in the church his whole life, and that's always been his thing. But as well as that, though, if you ask him about what he thinks of, you know, organized religion as a whole, or as most people that follow that, like you know, the woman that you were talking about or whatever, he definitely has a more open-minded approach to it. He's just in it because his father was before him as well. You know, his father was big into religion, so he followed that, but in his own way. So he's still connected to the church quite a lot. He still does a lot for it, but he is more self-reflective, and he's a lot more open to other philosophies as well. But for him, it's a medium for healing. You know, like his music, especially when he plays in the choir, a lot of the people in his choir, you know, everybody's there to heal themselves and others through that medium of church and music and religion, you know. So it can be used as a tool for that as well, definitely.
Oh, I feel it, of course it is. It's a tool for healing and connection, and to connect to something bigger than yourself. But there's a lot of what would you say, vulnerable people getting taken advantage of by things
Absolutely.
Like that. Essentially,
100%.
like even in the spiritual communities as well. the non-religious, but the spiritual communities too, vulnerable people also get taken advantage of there as well, because
100%.
because that's life. Every sector of life is vulnerable to people who are going to take advantage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Which is why
yeah.
it's also important to be able to self-reflect and self-analyze, because the more that you know yourself, the more you understand others, the harder it is then to be manipulated in a negative sense, or the harder it is to be manipulated in a negative sense, because you can see more things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's I suppose that's one of the biggest things about the organized religion, or the how did you phrase it about the woman in addiction through God? How did you phrase that?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm straight up drawing a blank.
What, she went straight from addiction to religion without any internal process?
Yeah, that was it. So that then leaves a lot of room, I feel, for fear. Of course, I mean, if it works, it works. If you don't do the thing that's unhealthy for you out of fear, you're still not doing the thing that's unhealthy for you, but you are now doing something else that's unhealthy for you, and that's living in fear of something if you do something,
Yeah.
So either way, there's something unhealthy, but I suppose, look, one is worse than the other. Or is it?
Well, let's say here's my interpretation of it is, you still haven't dealt with fear. You've stopped an action that doesn't complement your life. Or sorry, it does complement your life, because it complements the vibration you're on. It doesn't this is why semantics are just important, because it doesn't bring about happy, useful circumstances. Those actions, when you're in addiction, don't bring about happy, useful circumstances. They bring about painful ones. And I forgot where I was going now. What did you say that sparked this conversation?
Well, I was saying how you've essentially, I'm going to paraphrase now because I can't remember word for word.
The fear. We're talking about the fear.
Yeah.
You haven't resolved that fear that's underneath. That fear or the sadness that's driving you to that. First of all, you haven't dealt with the fear or the sadness or the insecurity or the unhealed wound that drove you to addiction in the first place. You've just switched. Your external focus is the addiction, and now your external focus is the religion. There's no internal process. You haven't looked at the wound at all. You're just ignoring it further by jumping into religion. Not saying that there's nothing wrong with religion. I'm just saying that if you go from one thing to another, you could replace the religion with, you could go from alcohol to gambling. You could go from alcohol to the gym. You could go from gambling to being too social all the time, and you burn yourself out. Like,
that is a big one.
If you just don't deal with the underneath, the root cause, we say, if you don't deal with that root cause, you still have an unhealthy relationship to something else that's kind of stopping you from going there. Chris, I'm going to wrap this up now because I have to put the dinner on.
No worries.
But we have to do a part 2 because this is a really enjoyable conversation.
Yeah, 100%, bro. Absolutely. It has been a pleasure, and I would very much like to come back on as soon as you're ready.
I'm down, man. I'm down. So do you have any words of wisdom or encouragement for people to live by before we go?
Oh, that's a big responsibility. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I do like to say to be the change that you wish to see. So, I mean, if you see something in the world that you don't like, try to yourself steer in the direction that you feel is right. And also, I would like to say that no matter what terrible thing goes on in your life, it is there to teach you, and every negative in the long run, if you process it right, is a positive. That's about as much as I've got, my guy.
Yurt, you big legend. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to do the sign off now.
Yeah. No, my guy. Nice one for having me.
Hey, no bother. Nice one for coming on. We Are All Class is just a journey to the why. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Yurt Cuz.
Please don't feed the demons. They get big and you only see them. Please don't feed the demons. Accepting them is the only way to defeat them.